Welcome back, South Philly Sauce, an Audacy original brought to you by 94 WIP and Jack Daniels, Ashlyn, Sullivan, Al Morganti back here with you. Apologies on my audio for this episode. I'm in studio, so I don't have the proper equipment, so this only happened this episode. Thanks so much for staying with us and listening, guys. And the Flyers, 2 games into this season, we're getting ready for a big game tonight against the Edmonton Oilers on national television, and rightfully so. This is a big matchup, and we found out a good bit about this Flyers team. They're sitting 1-1 currently after we did our broadcast Friday and Saturday night. Some late night hockey to start the season is a pretty brutal way to start the year, Al. But we knew they'd come out of the gates firing, and that's certainly what they did.
Yeah. So before you move on, apologies from me because I was supposed to be there but screwed up my schedule. I don't have a lot of ink, different colored ink to write in where I'm supposed to be all the time. So I'm in the wrong place, which is why you're apologizing for your audio.
Your Google Calendar, the way I told you, then this wouldn't happen. You guys need for my color coding, but it works out.
All I knew is I knew where I was supposed to be to play golf yesterday and screwed this up. So I guess my priorities are not in order. Anyway, yeah, it was a brutal start to and we're only in the middle of it to see what's going to happen this year. The start of the season, I think it's of all the teams in the NHL that are on this side of the ocean, not going overseas, this to me is a really tough start for a team. And I know the coaching staff would say, "Oh, we get to have everybody together," but I don't. I think it's really tough to go from West Coast to Alberta, back to West Coast. So it's going to be trying. I thought we saw some good things. We saw some not so good things early.
Yeah, and I think especially when you look at the second game, whereas right now they had a couple days off, they get to Edmonton. We saw, for example, Michkov and all the Russians, they got to have dinner together. And that's what they like about starting the season on this road trip is you get away from the distractions. But what was brutal is that Friday to Saturday time in between traveling to Calgary was nothing. It was non-existent right back on the ice. And I think they suffered from it because that was a team, I thought, with the Flames that the Flyers should have been able to beat and just as a whole got down, couldn't fight back. But then the first game of the season, they looked really fast. So now you're wondering for expectations for Edmonton. When we looked at this trip, we thought, okay, this Oilers game is definitely the most difficult. But then you look at the Oilers who are really struggling to start the year, maybe not as difficult as we thought it was going to be.
Well, I'm more worried the other way. I'm scared to death that Edmonton getting off to a slow start again. I know they managed to overcome it last year. But, I mean, if you've played the number of games Edmonton has and McDavid hasn't done anything special, I'm wondering when is this going to explode right now? And especially with a home crowd that's going to be antsy. I don't care that they went to the finals. I mean, you know what it's like in sports. What have you done for me lately? And McDavid not having gone off yet. And, Ashlyn, we saw last year when it was, whatever the star of the other team was, the Flyers had trouble containing that top-end talent, whether it was McDavid, McKinnon, whomever. And this to me is I won't even call this a trap game because I think you have to expect that you're going to get the full force of the Edmonton torpedo coming at you here because they just can't afford to just think it's going to happen like last year. Oh, yeah, we'll just lollygag through October, November, and December. Now, I think there's a lot of demands on it. And I especially am worried about I'm really worried about McDavid looking down at that stat sheet and saying, be a good time to put up 3 or 4 here.
Yeah, not to mention that the Oilers, they haven't just lost, they've lost big time. I mean, 6-0, 5-2, 4-1. And then when you have the Flyers, you're looking, especially as we're looking at the pairings for morning skate, doesn't look like Nick Seeler is going to play against Edmonton. We're not quite sure, but he wasn't at morning skate. So these defensive pairs are a little rattled as of now, which is not ideal when you're playing a team like Edmonton.
No, when you're playing a team it's going to be incumbent on everybody to play a good sound defensive game. But the Flyers, I don't even know what's set there. As you mentioned, Seeler being out, that throws kind of a curve at everything on what it's going to look like. But I think if you looked at the tape and you were playing against the Flyers, you'd start to say, well, maybe we can expose some things here. They haven't looked as tight as I wanted them to look early in the year. They're still managing. And I'm really kind of concerned with, Drysdale showing off good offensive skills, but I'm kind of concerned that he might be partner dependent on how he plays the game, who he's going to play with, how he's going to play that game. And we already saw, and we saw teams, especially Calgary, taking a couple of runs at him because he's not the biggest guy. He's got that history of injury. And I'm wondering how they're going to set this up with Drysdale, who's going to be his partner through most of the year. Yeah,
and as of right now, we're not quite sure because it was supposed to be maybe Nick Seeler. We're just not sure how these pairings are going to work out because they're already so jumbled. And especially we look at expectations for the season and a lot of eyes obviously on Matvei Michkov. A little bit of everything, I would say, in 2 games. I thought it was encouraging, especially I thought both games, he started a little slow, a little unsure. And then by the third period, it was what we saw in the preseason. So I think as a whole, which we should expect, is this is a guy that's just still trying to get his feet wet in the NHL.
Yeah, there was some great moves. In tight, in close, passes, which were really good, protect the puck, power play. So there were some good signs. I think those that were expecting, when you say in the NHL a top end talent, top gear, a lot of times you just think of wheels, right? Speed, overall speed. But I think when you look at Michkov, when you consider the word speed, you have to consider the speed of processing what's going on and the speed of being able to make a play with hands or whatever, not necessarily flat out skating speed. The speed with which he plays the game, the way it processes, where the puck's going to go, who it's going to go to, that's the fast part. And we've already seen that of Michkov's game. And what's really impressive is that speed doesn't slow down around the net. It doesn't slow down to get a pass across the crease. Especially with Konechny, he's been able to move it across. So I think we saw the good signs were that he can make those plays and he should actually have more points, Ashlyn. I thought that he set up a couple of, I thought just bunt the puck home basically and didn't end up getting the point on it.
Yeah, and I think the most encouraging sign is that he looks like he belongs. And really all the guys do. I think Jetlochenko as well. We knew they were going to make a little bit of mistakes being young guys on the ice, but as a whole, they're not a liability out there, which is what you wanted to see at this point. And that's one of those encouraging signs, I think, for me when we talk about what we've liked so far the first 2 games. What I've liked the most when I think I look back on those 2 games is, to me, they just look like a faster team. They look like they're making more plays. They look more decisive. They look more aggressive. As a whole, it just looks like a team that's ready to take this next step. And I've noticed a big difference, and we compare it to the end of last year, of just the overall speed of the game. The Flyers, to me, look a lot quicker than they were.
Yeah, they moved the puck quicker. I think that's what I'm noticing too. They got in off the rush last year, but unable to move it in that zone, which is where Michkov comes in to make seam passes. We saw maybe the first time South Philly sauce really lived up to its name with the team when Brink threw an unbelievable sauce pass in the offensive zone. And that's what you're looking to see. That's where things really work. When you can zip that puck around that zone. That's what John Twitterall was talking about, where things kind of fell apart last year. They got their overall speed going in. They entered the zone with some speed, but then they couldn't finish, I guess would be the term, because they couldn't get the puck across ice. They couldn't make those seam passes. And we've already seen more of those that year. So that's what I find really encouraging.
Yeah. And I think as well, the penalty kill, still really encouraging. You're getting results from that. And the power play, a little bit better 2 games in. Our first broadcast, we're talking about power play going intermission. I was like, this is too good to be true. I can't get used to this.
Yeah, what I really like with the power play, they seem to have one-touch passes where it goes the tic-tac-toe. Yeah. The tack and the tic-tac-toe, that was missing before. So I think that's what we've seen. If you don't have that, it's not going to go. It's going to not be able to be zipped around. We've seen that already. Maybe even like a shot pass to somebody deeper into the zone. So I think that's been incorporated into. We'll see what happens, but it certainly looks like that's kind of been what they've tried to cook up, watching practice, kind of what they're trying to cook up in this revamped, revised, alive, finally, power play. We hope we'll find out through the rest of this trip and certainly when they come home.
Yeah, so far so good. And I think the next point is it's a good, and it's also what needs to improve is the goaltending situation. I thought Sam Ersson played excellent that first game of the season, like we all expected him to play. Stood on his head, kept the team in the game, and looked like a true starting goaltender. What I was most worried about was Ivan Fedotov. How big of a drop up would it be from Ersson to Fedotov? It's a drop-off. We knew it would be when you're a backup goaltender, but I think as a whole, we need to see Fedotov's game rise a little bit to make it more even in this goaltending situation.
Yeah, it's we didn't see much of him last year, and it was unfair last year when he came in and didn't give him any time to get ready. But he was, to me, looked like he was playing deep in the net. The thing with Fedotov is when a goaltender makes mistakes often, we can say, okay, didn't track it. When you're that big, everything stands out more on what's going on. And there are sequences where I just didn't think he tracked the puck very well, or came across when it looked like a shot was going to be set up from a point or whatever. So, I mean, although he's in a lot of people's minds, he's already been here a year, really he hasn't. I mean, it was so off the cut, so quick last year on what happened. No time to prepare, no time to get ready. So I think you're going to have to live with some of him still getting used to a North American game on what's going on. But it certainly wasn't overly encouraging, let's put it that way, in the way he played in the second game there. And they're going to have to count on him now with this schedule. Because of the Four Nations tournament, there's so many back-to-backs going to be coming up in this league for everybody, not just the Flyers. But that means your backup goaltender is going to be that important. So we'll see how he comes along. And no secret that down there and with the Phantoms, they've got a goaltender that everybody's pretty high on, and actually overseas in Russia again. So although they paid him a lot of money, I think there's some pressure on him right now to kind of carry the load when Ersson needs a night off.
Big time. And that's the encouraging thing, that it's not the end all be all. The Flyers do have other options, big name options. And if, this doesn't go well, they can switch it out. Money is one thing, but track record has shown that sometimes that just happens where you pay a guy a lot of money and it doesn't pan out. But I think as a whole, we just got to give Ivan Fedotov a little more time. I mean, there's still some questions about his game.
Give him some time to acclimate himself to this league, which I don't think I just count, like last year, I just don't even consider it all. It was just like a whirlwind. It's like, okay, we're starting from scratch here with him.
Yeah, and now we're looking at the remaining schedule for this week before we talk to you guys again on South Philly Sauce. So Edmonton Tuesday evening, and then at Seattle. And really just, I think the biggest talking point is the travel here. And especially, we're going to talk about it on Friday's episode, from Seattle to the home opener is no time at all. So this is a pretty brutal week.
It is a brutal week. You know it coming in, and that's going to be tough coming back. But I guess I expect a lot of energy for that home opener. And I expect when you're playing Edmonton, you should be pumped up for that game. Going back out wet to the other coast is another story. That's a really tough ask for the Flyers to go in. I also want to see how Tortorella manages this lineup with Cates, Delorier. I mean, there's still people to kind of filter in here to see where Risto is in this situation. I think Farabee, I thought had several good scoring chances. So I mean, and where's Michkov going to go? Which side of the ice, play with who? So there's a lot of moving parts right now coming in to the rest of this road trip, and hopefully more are in place by the time they hit the home ice.
Yes, that is the hope, and 2 more games to discuss in our next episode of South Philly Sauce before the Flyers come home for that home opener. So thanks so much for tuning into this episode presented by Jack Daniels and 94 WIP. We will talk to you later on this week.